All righty, here we go on this big adventure. I'm not really sure where we're going, but I just wanted to at least get us started and see what's going on. Um, we are going to do one section, kind of finish this up this week, and then we will start after spring break back up with section 9-7. I want to try to walk you through a couple things here. At least wanted to show you my face here, and then as we talk through things, see what we can work out. I'm going to disable the camera for a little bit and just have the screen. So let's see if I can do that. All right, it looks like I did. All right, as you're going through here, a couple of things that you're going to have to be able to do is when you go to your Canvas and you go to the home page, there's going to be a couple ways to access what we are doing. Number one, you can go to modules. And now we are in section 9-6, so we're in chapter 9. It would help if you would minimize all your other chapters because now you might have them all open. If you go to the arrow here and minimize them, that'll save you a little bit of time. And then we go to 9-6. Now this isn't finished, but it at least show you what's going on. I have this remote learning lesson letter, which I passed out last Friday that you can access. And if I click on that, it will download. And then you can take a look at this again. Main thing off of this letter is if you would go to my text to the remind so that I can communicate with you through this way. I'll also look to communicate with you through announcements on Canvas as well. So it would be helpful to have both of those and be able to access both. You can also access what we're doing through the calendar. Although sometimes the lesson, hold on here. The lesson that I present will not be due that day, and I have to post it on the due date. So this says the 20th, which is Friday. That is the day the assignment's going to be due. You're not going to have anything to do over spring break, but this will show up the 20th, and I'll kind of remind you and remind how to get to that. So if there are any issues, though, don't hesitate to email me. All right. Also, I do need to post the guided notes. Let me do that now. I am going to pause this and put up those guided notes. So 1 second. Okay, so I uploaded the guided notes, and for most sections, there will be guided notes available. It will be listed under basically the assignment. I'm going to go to modules. I'll go to the section for that day. And then you see the remote learning lesson, and then you see the section 9.6 notes. You're more than welcome to print those off and then use them as a guide. I would do that before the lesson starts. Okay, so go to there, print those off, and now you have everything that you can access, and then you can just write on those, keep those in your notebook as we're working through these. Now, we already started this set of notes the previous Friday, so hopefully you already have some of that filled in. All right, we're just going to kind of continue and finish with those. All right, we want to solve quadratic equations by factoring. Factoring comes back up. We did it in chapter 8. A lot of you are really good at it. This will also be a good review for some of you need a little extra help. And we talked about this. If A times B equals 0, okay, then one of two things has to be true. And we said then A equals 0 or then B equals 0. That's the only way that can happen. So if you got 3x equals 0, then x has to equal 0. That's the only way that's going to work for that. And it's also going to be applied to quantities. And that's what we're going to look at mostly for this section. So this is the case here. This is the first one. It says use the product property to solve the equation. Check your answer. Think about this as your A. This is your B. And they're multiplying to equal 0. One of them has to equal 0. So when we have this case, we take each part and set each part equal to 0. And we solve them separately. We're going to get more than one answer for here. So all I got to do is add 7, I get x equals 7. Subtract 2, I get x equals negative 2. Now, when we write this answer, since we have two separate answers, I got to write it in these braces. And I usually write the smallest one first, not that I would take off, but that's usually how it's written. Do not write it like this because that is an ordered pair. Our answer is not an ordered pair. It is two separate numbers. It is negative 2 and it is positive 7. And this is how we're going to solve any case where there is parentheses together that equals 0. So for this one here, I got x minus 2 in parentheses times x, and it equals 0. It always has to equal 0. What you can do is you can just set each piece equal to 0. Well, this one's done. Don't have to do anything to that. Well, x minus 2 equals 0. You still got to get x by itself. You have to add 2. You get x equals 2. Two answers in this case, 0 and 2. No matter which one you plug in, it's going to work. It's going to give you an answer of 0. And the third one here. Okay, now the other two were a little bit simpler. You didn't have a number in front of the x. This is just adds a little bit to it. You already have them multiplied together. Think of this as your a times, think of this as your b equals 0. Then one of them has to equal 0. So we set this up as 2x minus 1 equals 0. This is 3x plus 5 equals 0. All right, now this will require a little bit more work to get x by itself. Add 1. That gives you 2x equals 1, and then we divide by 2. Now on your calculator, that'll give you 0.5, but go ahead and keep it as a fraction. Just keep it as 1/2 is fine. Subtract 5 here. I get 3x equals negative 5. Divide by 3. Since it doesn't divide evenly, just keep it as a fraction. So when I go to write my answers, I need, you'll get, that should be a 3 there. You'll get negative 5/3 and 1/2. For a problem like this, I need to see that work. Okay, I definitely need to see that work. All right, I'm going to pause here again for a second. Okay, so we're good there. All right, now this gives us a situation where we can solve a problem like this. I showed you something like this on Friday. You can't really get x by itself. Here's what we do is we're going to factor that. We're going to go what we used to do. Now this one's not on your guided notes, so just pay attention. Go back to how we learned to factor. What two numbers multiply to 10, add to get 7, and it's 5 and 2. And now we have the parentheses. When it's written with the parentheses, they actually do the hard work for us. Now, there's going to be more difficult problems where we have to do the factoring. Then we break these two up. Okay, so now that gives us an option on how to solve quadratic equations, but they have to equal 0. All right, now let's take a look at ones that are going to be on your guided notes there. All right, first one there, x squared minus 6x plus 8. Factor that. We're looking for two numbers that multiply to equal 8, add together to equal negative 6. So they both have to be negative. It's going to be negative 4 and negative 2. So if you don't have a number in front of the x, you can just jump right to this step here. It's x minus 4 times x minus 2 equals 0. And now you break it apart into the x minus 4 equals 0, x minus 2 equals 0. And we solve by adding 4. I get x equals 4. Add 2 to both sides. You get x equals 2. So in the end, my answer is 2 comma 4, which means both answers will work. If you plug in 2 for x, now 2 has to go in for both x's. So 2 squared minus 6 times 2 plus 8 has to equal 0, and it gives me 4 minus 12 plus 8. And then if you do 4 minus 12 plus 8, it does indeed equal 0. So you know that's a solution. 4 is also a solution. 4 squared minus 6 times 4 plus 8 equals 0. That's 16 minus 24 plus 8 equals 0. 16 minus 24 is negative 8. Negative 8 plus 8 is 0. So they both work. They're two distinct answers. All right. Take a look at number 2. X squared plus 4x equals 21. Now, the big thing with this, we said it earlier, I'll keep repeating it. You cannot do this method unless it equals 0. This does not equal 0. We have to make it equal 0. And we do that by subtracting 21. Now that gives me an x squared, a 4x, and a negative 21 on that side. None of those are like terms. I want to put it in descending order with the exponents, which we call standard form. Now I can factor. I need two numbers that multiply to equal negative 21 and add together to equal 4. Well, those two numbers are 7 and negative 3. So there's no number in front of the x squared. I can jump to this step here and make it x plus 7 times x minus 3 equals 0. X plus 7 equals 0. X minus 3 equals 0. Subtract 7. Add 3. And then I get two answers of negative 7, 3. Okay, those will be my two answers. Now, I think that's it on this page. All right, so that's 1 and 2. They both have just an x squared. All right, how do we do something that has a number in front? We factored this before, okay, and we kind of did it a little bit special way. This is where you take the first number, which is your A, your last number, which is your C, you multiply those together. 3 times 1 is 3. Now we look for two numbers that multiply to equal the 3, add together to equal negative 4. Only way that can work, multiply to get a positive and add to get a negative, is they're both negative. Negative 3 and negative 1. Now remember, here's what we did in this case. We don't mess with the first and we don't mess with the last. We break this one up into the two cases. So it stays 3x squared, and then you take this and make it minus 3x minus 1x, or just x, plus 1 equals 0. And now we factor by grouping. We group the first two terms, the last two terms, we find the GCF for both. Well, for the first two terms, a 3x is the GCF. If a negative is your first sign of the two, you have to make your GCF negative. It's going to be negative 1 here. When I divide by 3x, I get x minus 1. Negative 1 is my GCF. You divide a negative 1 divided by negative 1. That's going to leave you x. Positive 1 divided by negative 1 is a negative 1. So these two match up. Now when I do my last step, it becomes x minus 1 times 3x minus 1 equals 0. Now I have it factored. But in this case, I'm trying to solve, which means I have to take this next step and set both of those equal to 0. And I solve them, and I get x equals 1. And over here, you add 1. And now I get 3x equals 1. divide by 3, I get 1/3. So I get two answers. My first answer is 1/3. My second answer is 1. Either one of those will make this equation equal to 0. So we get two separate answers. And now remember, we got to factor it. All right, the fourth one doesn't equal 0. We have to make it equal 0. Add 9. 4x squared plus 12x plus 9 equals 0. Got a number in front of the x squared. We need to multiply the 4 and the 9, that 4 together, 36. I need two numbers to multiply to equal 36, add to get 12. All right, think about it. What multiplies to get 36 and adds to get 36 will be 6 and 6. So break this apart. You don't mess with the first and the last one. You split the 12 into two terms. It'll be plus 6x plus 9 equals 0. We factor by grouping. All right, what's the GCF of 4x squared plus 6x? It is 2x. What's the GCF of 6x plus 9? It is 3. When you factor out the 2x and you divide, you get 2x plus 3. When you do the 3, divide both of those by 3, you get 2x plus 3. Got to have the same parentheses. I do. That goes in my first group. My second group will be whatever these two are. 2x plus 3. All right, now you notice they're both the same. That's okay. We split this up. Subtract 3. Divide by 2. Go ahead and keep that as a fraction. Negative 3/2 is fine. All right, and some of you might recognize what's going to happen. I'm going to get the same answer. Okay, if you get the same answer, you do not have to list it twice. In this case here, I technically only get one answer. You would not list them both times. It would just be negative 3/2 would be my one answer for this case. Got it? All right. All right, that fifth one there. It says x squared plus 8x equals 0. This one does not have a constant. See, this one had a 1. Number 3 had a 1. Number 4 had a negative 9. This one equals 0 and it doesn't have a constant. This one is actually a little bit quicker. It does factor, but you need to think GCF. What's the GCF of those? It's just an x. If you take that out, you end up with x times x plus 8 equals 0. X equals 0. X plus 8 equals 0. Subtract 8. I get x equals 0 and negative 8. I am done. So it's a little bit of a special case there. Actually easier if you recognize it. Sometimes that without a constant throws you off. All right, we're going to skip this last one. And I'll just tell you, just kind of give you a little bit of reminder. Sometimes you have a GCF for the whole thing, and you want to factor that out first. And that's going to give you negative 2. And when you divide all of these by negative 2, you get x squared plus 6x minus 7 equals 0. And then you can factor that. All right, I'm not so concerned about that one. All right, let's get to the last one. All right, a little bit of a word problem here. It said the height and feet of a diver above the water can be modeled by a function. H of t equals negative 16t squared plus 8t plus 8, where t is the time in seconds after the diver jumps off a platform. Find the time it takes for the diver to reach the water. All right, just give you a little bit of a picture here. Here's what's happening. This guy's diving off this platform. When he leaves, he's going to look, his path is going to look like this. This is the water. Okay, it's a parabola. A parabola can be represented by something with an x squared. Right here is where he hits the water. That's where the height equals 0. Well, that's going to be a case where we're going to set it equal to 0 and solve. So you take the equation. You take the equation right here, negative 16 t squared plus 8t plus 8, and we set it equal to 0. We want to know how long it will take to hit the water. The only way we know how to solve this is to factor it. Now, this is one of those cases where it does have a GCF. What'll go into negative 16? 8 and 8. It would be negative 4. I'm going to factor that out first. That gives me 4t squared minus 2t minus 2. All right, I just noted something. Since these all have something in common, I did not take out the GCF. What will actually go into 16, 8, and 8 that is bigger than 4? It's actually going to be negative 8. Let me fix that. Okay, that's going to be negative 8, negative 8, negative 8. So put a negative 8 out in front. That gives me 2t squared minus t minus 1 equals 0. All right, that negative 8 is part of what we have, but I don't need to worry about it. I'm going to factor that by grouping, which means I'm going to take 2 times negative 1. This 2 here, this negative 1. That equals negative 2. I need two numbers that multiply to equal negative 2. Add to get negative 1. Negative 2 and positive 1. Okay, that negative 8 just kind of stays out there. I'm going to worry about it later. I got 2t squared minus 2t plus 1 plus 1t minus 1 equals 0. Okay, these both have a 2t in common. These have a 1. All right, I'm going to move down here a little bit. Kind of, my water's in the way. All right, the 2t, and then you got t minus 1 plus 1, t minus 1 equals 0. T minus 1 comes out, 2t plus 1. And now I'm going to take this negative 8, put it here. That would be the final factored form. Now, since this negative 8 doesn't have a t, it's not going to come into play in my problem. Okay, so I got, hold on here, I'm not sure what's going on. Hold on, give me a second. All right, I think I got it fixed. This negative 8 doesn't have a t, so it's not going to be part of our final answer. So we can just now take this and we can set t minus 1 equals 0. And we set 2t plus 1 equals 0. And when I add 1, I get t equals 1. When I subtract 1, I get 2t equals negative 1 divided by 2. T equals negative 1/2. All right, the question says, find the time it takes for the diver to reach the water. That's when the height is 0. We get two answers. We get negative 1/2 and we get 1. It can't be a negative second. You can't go backwards in time. That doesn't count. So the time it takes to reach the water would be 1 second. That would be our final answer. Okay, that concludes our first attempt here. A couple things here. Homework, page 633, 20 through 30 even, and the following problems. Okay, you need to write the original problem down and you need to show your work. You're going to need to upload this through Canvas to me. This is your first assignment. That's how I check that, and I need to get this from everybody. This is due Friday by midnight. I'm going to put this on either Thursday. You either get this Thursday or maybe even Wednesday. You can start it, but it's due by Friday. Got it? Now you got to go to Canvas and then you have to upload it. Now, they said if it takes more than one page, Mr. Laverick said you guys can convert it to a Google Doc and you can upload it like that. You can also scan it and then upload it as a PDF if you got a scanner at home and you do it on your own paper. Well, you should do it on your own paper, period. Make sure your name's on it. Make sure your assignment is on that. Okay, now I'm going to have, quote, what are called office hours every day. Not every day or every other day. Tomorrow, Friday. Okay, I'm supposed to be available from 12 to 2. Well, I got two different classes. I got pre-calc and I got algebra 1. If you have any questions, you can get onto the conferences and I'll be here from 12 to 1. Just email me and let me know that you need to have some help. The conferences, if you go to over here on the page under the Algebra 1, conferences is right here. And then you can access it that way. And then we can start a new conference or I'll be on there and you'll just hit add existing conference. We'll need to work through this. This is a little bit new for everybody. Hopefully we can get this. If you're not sure, contact me, contact a friend. Maybe you guys can figure it out together. It wouldn't hurt to do this with somebody else the first time. All right, this marks the end of our first session. Hey, you're heading into spring break. Not too bad. Hopefully everything went okay. Turn this in so I got record of it. And I will be back after spring break. Thank you.